World is One, taking India's voice to the world.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Race to Power. I'm Ananya Datta and I'm here to talk about everything elections. This is what we have lined up for you. Taiwan is going to polls this Saturday, but every time we do a story on the island, we cannot help but mention China. And there is a reason behind it. Beijing has said today that the island's upcoming polls are China's internal affairs. Are issues with China going to top this year's voter concerns? We will find out in this broadcast. Now, it was a momentous day in France. The country is going through a rough political patch, but nevertheless, the day will go down in the country's history books. France has a new prime minister who is already breaking records. He's the country's youngest and the first openly gay head of government. We will get you more about him. Now, our top focus today, Beijing has reaffirmed its claim over Taiwan, saying that the island's upcoming elections are China's internal affairs. Even as balloons are repeatedly spotted flying over the Taiwanese Strait, the Chinese Foreign Ministry has skirted questions on Beijing's aggressive actions ahead of Saturday's polls. The ministry says that this is not a diplomatic issue.
Taiwan is an inalienable part of China's territory, and elections in the Taiwan region are China's internal affairs. This is not a diplomatic issue, and I refer you to the Taiwan Affairs Office for further details.
Meanwhile, Taiwan's foreign minister has warned the rest of the world on China's possible interference in the polls. He has said that China wants to use Taiwan as a test ground. And if they are able to successfully shape the results of the Taiwan elections, they will try to apply their tactics on other countries.
In our jargon, we call it cognitive warfare. And primarily, there are three categories. The first category is to tell the Taiwanese people that this particular election is a choice in between war and peace. They do military drills. They also engage in gray zone activities, and they are also very blatant official statements coming out of Chinese government agencies.
Now, the Taiwanese Defense Ministry issued an alert cautioning residents that there was a missile flyover. The Defense Ministry later clarified that China had launched a rocket carrying a satellite, not a missile.
We need to stay responsible. We need to stay moderate in order to prevent the conflict from happening in between Taiwan and China.
This comes as Taiwan's Vice President and ruling party candidate Lai Ching-te has said that the wishes to reopen dialogue with China based on equality and mutual respect. This after almost 8 years of Beijing's near complete refusal to communicate with leaders of the island. However, Lai has also said that he would hold to the current administration's policy of maintaining democratic Taiwan's de facto independence.
I will continue to uphold these policies, which are in the interest of both Taiwan and the international community. I will maintain the status quo and continue to bring society together with the framework of the Republic of China, Taiwan. Our door will always be open to engagements with Beijing on the principles of equality and dignity.
Now, speaking of DPP candidate Lai Ching-te, he is the front runner in the upcoming polls, but he's only leading by a narrow margin. Here's more on WION's Power Explainer.
Legislator, Mayor, Taiwan's Premier and current Vice President, Lai Ching-te has held almost every senior political post in the island nation since he stepped into politics 3 decades ago. All but one that he now hopes to strike off, the top job of the president. Leading in polls, the DPP candidate appears right on track to round out his career on January 13th.
The size exceeded expectations.
Still a shaping factor in his journey, it was China that first inspired Lai to enter politics. By 1996, when Taiwan held its first direct presidential election, Lai was already involved in the game, supporting DPP candidates.
The 2 candidates who favor closer relations with mainland China.
But when China lobbed missiles in a bid to sway the vote towards preferred candidates, he says he felt compelled to run for office himself. Lai chose southern city Tainan, where he worked as a doctor, to begin his political journey. Serving as the city's legislator in the years that followed, come 2010, he was elected as Tainan's mayor. He was re-elected in 2014 with nearly 73% of the votes. This was an unprecedented margin in the history of local elections in Taiwan. Given the level of support backing him, in 2017 he was appointed as the premier under President TAIWAN. But his tenure was not without controversy. Lai was also not very popular among young and female DPP supporters, resulting in his loss to Tsai for the 2020 presidential candidacy. Lai was then invited to be Tsai's running mate and has been the vice president ever since. His popularity has only risen during his tenure, and as the presidential polls inch closer, the frontrunner would hope to end his campaign with the same stronghold. He has promised to stick to Tsai's approach on the island's thorniest issue, its independence. A few years ago, Lai made headlines when he said that he is a politician who supports Taiwanese independence and would never change this stance, no matter what office he holds. But despite a narrow lead in polls, his victory is far from certain, as he runs against 2 China-friendly opponents. His campaign has shown continued focus on fending off Chinese attacks, both military and verbal. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Now, big news coming in from Bhutan. Former Prime Minister Tshering Tobgay won general elections with nearly 2/3 of seats in parliament. Local media shared the numbers based on preliminary results from each constituency. Now, there was no immediate confirmation from the Election Commission, which is expected to release final results on Wednesday. The elections have been dominated by serious economic challenges that call into question the Himalayan kingdom's long-standing policy to prioritize cross-national happiness over growth. Some voters had to trek for days to cast their votes in the landlocked mountainous nation of just 800,000 people. Career civil servant Pema Chewang, who is the leader of the Bhutan Tendril Party or the BTP, was running for the Prime Minister against former Prime Minister and People's Democratic Party chief Tshering Tobgay. Both parties had pledged a huge ramp-up of investment in hydropower, which is the Himalayan nation's primary source of energy. Bhutan's economy will be the main challenge for the new government. World Bank data says that Bhutan's youth unemployment rate is at a staggering 29%, while economic growth has sputtered along at an average of just 1.7% over the past 5 years. Young Bhutanese searching for better financial and educational opportunities abroad have left in record numbers since the last elections, with Australia as their top destination. Tourism, which makes a small share of Bhutan's economy but is a key earner of foreign currency, is yet to recover from the disruptions caused by the COVID-19 pandemic.
First of all, I hope the governments stick with their promises, and second, I hope they involve youths in the Gulf City project, and I also hope they take action on this mass migration into other countries. Those are my expectations.
Yeah, as long as we elect the right government, I think there will be. Both of the candidates are very capable, and I think they can do a very good job with the sectors of education and health as well.
The previous government pursued several projects to diversify the economy, including a special economic zone on the Indian border and plans to raise funds for a cryptocurrency mining scheme. Bhutan held elections for the first time in 2008 after political reforms established a parliament soon after the start of the reign of the present king, who remains hugely popular. Poll campaigns in the Buddhist majority nation have always been subdued, with strict rules mandating that election materials can only be posted on public notice boards. Bhutan lies between the globe's two most populous countries, China and India, who are watching with keen interest from across the strategic border zones. Now, in a massive political reset, French President Emmanuel Macron picked 34-year-old Gabriel Attal as his new prime minister. Attal will take over the reins from former Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne, who resigned on Monday. The 34-year-old Attal will be France's youngest and first openly gay head of government. Elisabeth Borne stepped down along with the rest of the government after less than 2 years in office. The cabinet overhaul comes ahead of the Olympic Games in Paris and the European Parliament elections this summer. In the upcoming polls, President Macron's centrist forces is facing a severe challenge from the far right under Marine Le Pen. A wider cabinet reshuffle is expected later this week as Macron seeks to sharpen his team for the final 3 years of his presidency. Now, Attal is expected to bring a major change in the working of the office of the Prime Minister. His 62-year-old predecessor, Borne, respect from colleagues for her austere and no-nonsense demeanor, but she was not necessarily popular with the public. Attal is arguably the most popular figure in government after his stint at the politically crucial Education Ministry. Confirming the move on social media, President Macron said that he wanted the new premier to bring back the spirit of bold change from when he first won office back in 2017. The appointment of Attal had been expected after Borne's resignation, although the absence of a swift announcement fueled talks that heavyweight government figures were unhappy over the meteoric promotion of a man known by fellow ministers as young Gabriel. Under the French system, the president sets general policies and the prime minister is responsible for day-to-day government management. This means the latter often pays the price when an administration runs into turbulence. Attal will go toe-to-toe ahead of the European elections with another rising star of French politics, the even younger Jordan Bardella. At just 28 years of age, Bardella is now the far-right party leader.
Place de rédiger ce livre noir du coronavirus intitulé Du fiasco à la...
Now, to decode what's happening in France further, we spoke to our correspondent Ross Cullen from Paris. He gets us the insights from the ground.
Gabriel Attal has been named as the new French Prime Minister, and it is now up to him to form a new government. So there are likely to be positional ministerial reshuffles taking place over the coming days. But Gabriel Attal, to start with, will have the formal introduction at the Matignon, that is the Prime Minister's office and residence here in Paris, after he's been to see Emmanuel Macron, and he replaces Elizabeth Borne, the 62-year-old former Prime Minister, in post since May 2022. But Emmanuel Macron believing that the time is right for a reshuffle to try to revamp his agenda and re-energise his presidency after a series of controversies surrounding pension reform policies and immigration policies last year.
Now, in other news, Germany's high-profile opposition leader, Sarah Wagenknecht, launched a new party. The party combines left-wing economic policy with a restrictive approach to migrants, due to which some believe that this policy could take votes away from the far-right Alternative for Germany party. According to her, the Sarah Wagenknecht Alliance, Reason and Fairness Party, is set to make its electoral debut in the European Parliament election in June. Sarah took a dig at centre-left Chancellor Olaf Scholz's unpopular government and asserted that many in Germany feel similarly to farmers who were protesting against a government plan to reduce their fuel subsidies.
They see a government that has no plan other than to take the money that has already become tighter out of their pockets. They see a chancellor who seems speechless, even when he makes long speeches. And they see an opposition that, to a large extent, actually supports the government's policies. And then you are surprised at the anger, protests and rejection votes.
Now, Sarah defines her party as something which will be working for social justice and will stand up for the people. The potential of the new party remains unclear. However, according to sources, the party's position might appeal to voters who might otherwise choose the nationalist, anti-migration Alternative for Germany party. Sarah, in October last year, broke from the Left Party. She and 9 other followers who quit the Left Party with her kept their seats in the German parliament. Now, ahead of the American elections, US President Joe Biden made his second major campaign speech since Friday. Aiming to cast Republican frontrunner Donald Trump as a threat to American democracy, Biden criticized the White House supremacist culture in the United States.
They're trying to determine to erase history and your future, banning books, denying your right to vote and have it counted, destroying diversity, equality, inclusion all across America, harboring hate and replacing hope with anger and resentment and dangerous view of America.
Now, Biden was delivering his speech from the pulpit of the Mother Emanuel Church in South Carolina, where in 2015, 9 black Americans were killed by a white stranger whom they invited to join their Bible study. Biden's speech reflected the emphasis his campaign is placing on black voters. Biden also thanked the state's black voters. Now, some Democrats believe that the party's popularity is facing a dip among the black voters in a state that in 2020 had seen Biden winning the presidential primary.
I'm here to speak to another truth. It's because of this congregation and the black community of South Carolina, and not an exaggeration, and Jim Clyburn, that I stand here today as your president, because of all of you. That's a fact. That's a fact. And I owe you.
However, Biden also faced disruptions. Only few minutes into his speech at the church, Biden was confronted by demonstrators with calls for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. The US president said he has been quietly working to pressure the Israeli government to get out of Gaza and that he understands the passion for a ceasefire.
That's all right. That's all right. That's all right.
Let's go across to Brazil now. The country marked 1 year of the January 8th riots, which saw former President Jair Bolsonaro supporters storming the seat of power. 1 year later, massive rallies and processions were carried out all across Brazil in favor of democracy. Incumbent President Lula da Silva has ruled out any scope of pardoning those responsible for the riots. Here's a report. January 8th last year marked one of the grimmest episodes in Brazil's democratic history. Rioters stormed the seat of power in South America's largest democracy. Thousands of supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro overran the capital of Brasilia, vandalizing the presidential palace, the Congress and the Supreme Court buildings. This was just after Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva had defeated the right-wing Bolsonaro in a highly polarized elections in October 2022. Bolsonaro rejected the election results, triggering the riots by his supporters. A year and hundreds of arrests later, Brazil is still recovering.
There can be no pardon for those who attack democracy, their country and their own people. Pardon would look like impunity, and impunity as a free pass for new terrorist attacks on our country. We saved democracy, but democracy is never ready. Democracy must be built and protected every day.
Salvamos a democracia.
1 year after the riots, thousands gathered in economic capital of Sao Paulo to defend Brazil's democratic ethos. Similar defense of democracy demonstrations were seen across the nation.
This demonstration is for memory and to avoid the risk of another coup in the country in the future and everything that happened on January 8th last year. The way they tried to invade Congress, the authoritarian way of people who didn't accept the result of the election. So today, this demonstration is symbolic to say that the democracy has won and we are here to represent that.
Brazil continues to witness the fallout from the riots. The police have carried out new raids to track down the planners and the financiers. Of the 2,170 people arrested so far, 30 have been convicted. Charges against them range from armed criminal conspiracy, violent uprising against the rule of law, and an attempted coup. The country's divisions seem less extreme today. The far right is reeling from the backlash of the riots, but underneath the surface, the issues remain.
January 8, 2023 left a wound in Brazilian society, and I think it will take a long time for it to heal. Which is why it's important for the society to be on the streets.
Bureau Report, WION World is One. And with that, we are wrapping up this edition of Race to Power. Thanks for watching with me, Ananya Datta.
India's Global Voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world.